Part 61. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 601. How could Xiejin let him run away so easily? He reached out and held him in his arms. Yao Yao. What are you doing? Xianyuan Yao waved his hand away. Didn't you just say that? You can do it alone, you don't need my help. Xiejin bit his ear. Need it? Xianyuan Yao was bitten all over by him, and he couldn't help but want to run away, but the man's face stopped him from such a shameful move, and said calmly, you yourself admit that what I said is right. Do the right thing. You can't be half-hearted when you're doing it, you have to be extremely energetic, you can't be lazy and careless, you need to be serious and focused. Yao Yao. Xiejin sighed, you just coaxed me, and now you start preaching again. Xianyuan Yao was silent. Who asked him to tease him about the Cold War? It made him think a lot and thought he was really angry. Damn guy. It's my fault. Xiejin apologized in a low voice. How about accepting the punishment? Xianyuan Yao turned his head to look at him, and saw that he was sincere, his eyes were shining, and his brows were really beautiful, and he couldn't help but feel soft. Well, he is also a common man captured by beauty. I don't know how to mix medicine and poison, so I can't help if I stay here. Xiejin let him go and said warmly, you don't have to do anything, just stay here and watch. Xianyuan Yao always felt uncomfortable hearing this. But he didn't say anything. He curled his lips and said calmly, what is the function of these poisons? Deal with the poisons in the Yun family's underground palace. Xiejin turned around and walked to the case, continuing to tinker with 2 kinds of herbs and 7 kinds of poisons. Let's play a big game tonight. Xianyuan Yao stood aside and watched him prepare the medicine, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. Is it possible to alert the enemy? I'm going to be shocked. Xiejin said, it has been 2 months since we came to Shangning. Do you think anyone has made trouble for us so far? Since I dare to do it, it means that I have made complete preparations to ensure that I can survive the whole body. Retreat. Hearing this, Xianyuan Yao said thoughtfully, it's strange to say that the Yun family is obviously very powerful and should have a lot of spies, but no one has noticed our arrival yet. They are so slow. I can't help but doubtful, how did the Yun family grow to this extent? Xiejin glanced at him, with a bit of a smile in his eyes. Then why don't you think about it? Shangning is such a dangerous place. The Yun family's spies are everywhere. If they are discovered, they will be hunted down. How can the Lord be at ease? Are we 2 people with no experience in handling cases here to investigate? Xianyuan Yao's heart moved and he suddenly understood. Yao Yao, pour me a cup of tea. Xianyuan Yao glanced at him, turned around, poured a cup of tea and brought it over. Just as he was about to hand it to Xiejin, Xiejin directly put his mouth towards him, obviously asking Xianyuan Yao to feed him a drink. Xianyuan Yao was stunned for a moment, then brought the tea to his lips angrily, but his movements were careful not to burn him. It might be a little hot. It's not hot anymore. Xiejin drank a cup of tea with his hand. The tea poured by Yao Yao is particularly delicious. Xianyuan Yao paused and looked at him calmly. The soup I boil is also very delicious. Do you want a bowl? Yao Yao can also cook medicine. Xiejin was surprised. Xianyuan Yao snorted. But I'm not sick or in pain now, and I don't seem to need any medicine. Xianyuan Yao sneered. But if Yao Yao really has a leisure time and thinks that I need to take medicine, I would be willing to cooperate with Yao Yao. Xiejin's voice was soft, with a taste like cotton candy. Although the medicine is very bitter, I am more afraid of it. Yao Yao is sad. Xianyuan Yao grasped the teacup and wanted to put it on Xiejin's head. Yao Yao, don't be violent with me. Xiejin noticed his impulsiveness and quickly reminded, I am a delicate little wife and I cannot withstand Yao Yao's violence. Xianyuan Yao's face froze and he almost forgot their roles. Frowning his brows, he said, which of your eyes saw me destroying you? I didn't see it, I'm just reminding you. Xiejin smiled harmlessly. Yao Yao must adapt to his role as a husband earlier, learn to be gentle and considerate to his wife, and can't show off his face at any time, can't lose his temper, and must pay attention to self-cultivation and behave like a man. Are you done? Xian Yuanyao interrupted him impatiently. I know how to be a good husband, I don't need you to teach me. Tisk, tisk. Xiejin slowly shook his head. Look, I'm impatient now. Xian Yuanyao. If he beats Xiejin now until he can no longer take care of himself, can he be allowed to just settle down? At most, he will take care of her for a few days. This guy is so old. Okay, Yao Yao, don't be angry, I won't offend you anymore. Xiejin turned his head and continued what he was doing, seriously not teasing Xian Yuanyao anymore. There was finally a moment of peace in the study. During lunch, the maid brought water for the two young masters to clean their hands. When they sat down at the dinner table, Xiejin raised his hand to screen the maid away and looked at Xian Yuanyao with interest. Yao Yao, have you ever seen how the Lord does it when eating? Xian Yuanyao was stunned. What? When your Majesty dines with His Majesty in the Dajhan Palace, your Majesty usually takes care of His Majesty's needs first. The prince also puts General Chu first in everything, so let him feed him. Xian Yuanyao's expression froze, and he looked at the dishes in front of him without any expression. The dishes on the table were simple. Xiejin remembered what he had said before, that they didn't need to prepare too many dishes for a meal, just enough to eat, and try not to waste. But the more Xian Yuanyao thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. What does it mean that a husband should be considerate of his wife? Although this is true, Xiejin is a man after all, isn't he? How can he be compared with His Majesty and General Chu? Could it be that he really put himself in the role of a woman? Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment, then looked up at Xiejin. Although it is unrealistic to turn you into a woman at the moment, it is possible to make the next best thing. If you are willing to enter the palace and castrate yourself, I will obey you in everything. I will do whatever you ask me to do, even if you ask me to break the washboard by kneeling, or ask me to be your slave, I will never say no. Xiejin's expression froze. Castrated? Xian Yuanyao said indifferently, although you are called a young wife, you are still a real man at present. I think the attitude of the master towards His Majesty and Xian Yuanqi towards General Chu are not suitable for us. Paused. If you really envy the treatment of His Majesty and General Chu, I suggest you go to the inner court to cleanse yourself. Xiejin's expression was subtle, and he was silent for a long time before he said in a complicated tone, Yao Yao is really cruel. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 602. Isn't that cruel? No ruthlessness, no husband. Xian Yuanyao said calmly and gently, my wife needs to get used to it sooner. Xiejin was silent, then looked at Xian Yuanyao subtly, with a flash of smile in his eyes. Yao Yao, I like you more and more. Xian Yuanyao's expression froze, he glanced at him expressionlessly, and lowered his head to eat. But his ears were quietly flushed. Xiejin wanted to laugh, who looked more like a little wife? It was obvious that this innocent little leopard looked more like it, but he had to be stubborn and refuse to admit it. But in order to avoid really making him angry, Xiejin stopped while he was ahead, although he thought that admitting that he was a wife was originally giving in to him. After all, it was natural for a husband to pamper his wife. But the words couldn't be said too bluntly, otherwise the little leopard would get angry. The meal was peaceful and full of happiness. In the afternoon, Xiejin continued to go into the study. Xian Yuanyao practiced swordsmanship outside for a while, followed him in to take a look, and then turned around and walked out. Xiejin did not stop him, and let him arrange his activities. In the evening, when it was about to get dark, Xiejin put the things he had finished into several sealed porcelain bottles, plugged them, and walked out of the study. Can we take action? Xian Yuanyao stood in the courtyard with a solemn look. Are there any omissions? Xiejin raised his eyebrows. Yao Yao, do you think we are going to go through fire and water? Why are you so serious? Xian Yuanyao frowned. Let's go. Xiejin turned and walked towards the bedroom. Change clothes first. Xian Yuanyao understood what this meant after hearing this. It was obvious that there was a big action tonight, and he needed to change into night clothes. Fortunately, Xiejin still had such a calm expression, as if he was just going for a walk and buying something. The two of them changed into night clothes and put on an ordinary robe. Xian Yuanyao was about to go out when he heard Xiejin say, Yao Yao, come and sit down. Xian Yuanyao turned his head. Xiejin motioned him to sit on the stool in front of the mirror. Xian Yuanyao was puzzled, but still sat down as he said. Xiejin took out a bottle of paste, scooped out a piece, and began to smear it on Xian Yuanyao's face. What is this? Fine rouge and powder. Xiejin said. Dress Yao Yao up a little bit, take him to the brothel to sell, it should be able to sell for a good price. Xian Yuanyao was silent. He shouldn't have asked, this guy never said a good word, and he would start a dyeing room in an instant if he was a little bit good. Xiejin lowered his eyes to look at his expression. Yao Yao is angry. I don't have time to be angry with you. Xian Yuanyao said calmly. Which brothel are you going to sell me to? Xiejin pretended to think about it, or sell me to be the 18th concubine. Xian Yuanyao. Seeing that he was embarrassed and didn't say anything, Xiejin smiled and didn't say anything, and carefully put makeup on him. Look in the mirror for yourself. Xian Yuanyao didn't say anything, raised his eyes and looked at the gentle scholar in the mirror. Well, he really looked like a gentle and old-fashioned scholar, and his appearance was only 3 points similar to his previous appearance. At first glance, he was completely a different person. Good skills, Xian Yuanyao praised. Who did you learn from? I learned it by myself. Xiejin motioned him to stand up, and then he sat down and applied the lotion on his face in front of the mirror. If I wasn't afraid of being beaten with a cane after returning, I wouldn't bother to apply these things at all. Yeah, I think so too. Xian Yuanyao stood aside and nodded slowly in agreement. A man should not change his name or surname in the world, and be open and aboveboard in everything he does. Covering his head and face like this is shameful and not in line with the style of a real man. Xiejin turned his head and glanced at him, then quickly turned his head to continue to apply. What does Yao Yao want to say? Who told you to be afraid of the cane? Xian Yuanyao sneered. There's nothing I can do about it. Xiejin was dissatisfied. Yao Yao is laughing at me. No. Xian Yuanyao shook his head honestly, because I'm afraid too. Xiejin curled his lips. Applying these things is just in case, so that the master can't catch them, right? That's right. Xian Yuanyao nodded. The regent is busy with government affairs, and can only enjoy the happy time with Her Majesty the Queen when he has time. We really shouldn't cause him more trouble. After all, beating people also takes time and energy. Xiejin raised a smile at the corner of his lips. He found that when he liked someone, he really felt that his words were particularly pleasant, and the slightest expression on his face could be seen as cute. Xian Yuanyao just stood quietly and watched. When Xiejin applied it to him, he didn't feel much, but now he clearly saw that Xiejin's face changed from handsome and unparalleled to a rough and wild image of a wanderer. A box of inconspicuous ointment can actually have such a great effect? It was really amazing. When Xiejin had fixed his face, it was completely dark outside. The two of them stood up and walked out, and soon disappeared in the dark night. The Shangning Yun family was a complicated family with many branches. Among them, a young man named Yun Ping was the most respected one in the branch because he was good at using poison. Not the poison of poison, but he liked to drive poisonous creatures such as scorpions, snakes, and strains. Yun Ping was also a romantic and lustful man. His house was very big. Of course, it could not be compared with the main house of the old Yun family, but as a branch of the Yun family, his residence was magnificent. Yunping and his poison pets lived in the east courtyard, and his concubines lived in the west courtyard. Yunping also had a hobby. If those beautiful concubines lost favor, they would be kept as pets and become the favorites of poisonous plants, scorpions, or snakes, feeding these poisonous creatures with their delicate flesh and blood. Therefore, the fate of women who entered Yunping's backyard was often tragic. This is also a brain problem. Xian Yuanyao stood under a high wall, and his low voice did not hide his disgust. Why do they have so many disgusting and cruel habits? This is the difference between humans and livestock. Xiejin covered his face with a scarf and jumped onto the top of the wall. Yao Yao, come up and take a look. Xian Yuanyao jumped up and jumped onto the top of the wall with a light tap of his toes. He looked at the wide courtyard in silence. Under the dim light, he could see countless black spots slowly crawling on the ground. What are these? Yunping drives and raises insect eggs, Xiejin said, reaching out from his arms to take out a bottle of prepared powder, unplugging the bottle, and sprinkling the powder little by little on the wall in the yard. There was no wind tonight, and the powder fell steadily, and a special smell slowly permeated the courtyard, spreading farther and farther. Xiejin walked briskly on the top of the wall, sprinkling the powder all over the edge of the courtyard wall, then threw away the bottle and jumped off the high wall lightly. Let's go. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 603. Xian Yuanyao turned and left, soon blending into the darkness again. Do those insect eggs usually stay there? Xian Yuanyao couldn't help wondering, and asked Xiejin, will they run away by themselves? No, Xiejin's voice sounded particularly calm at night. There is a special smell in that yard, and the insect eggs haven't formed yet, so the range of activity is so small that they can't run away. But if they touch the human body, it will be disgusting. Xian Yuanyao thought to himself, it's really disgusting. So many insect eggs, and they are all poisonous, just looking at it makes people's scalp tingling. But since Yunping can raise so many disgusting things, I think there must be a way to control them. Where are we going now? I'll tell you when I get there. Xiejin's body flexibly flew through the night, walking quickly along the unmanned areas on both sides of the street, bypassing two streets, and walked into a remote alley. He slowed down his pace and his voice rang out, the most powerful mechanical master of the Yun family lives here. Xian Yuanyao's eyebrows moved slightly, and he quickly understood what Xiejin meant. The Yun family has strong internal defenses, with experts in poison, experts in mechanical devices, and many assassins. If he and Xiejin want to break into the Yun family's old house, they must first get rid of these evil masters. Only by holding them back can they ensure that there is no worry when they act. However, although Xian Yuanyao understood Xiejin's intention, he did not expect Xiejin's method to be so powerful. When Xiejin poured another bottle of medicine powder into a courtyard wall in the same way, he was surprised. There is an expert in mechanical devices here, and your medicine powder also works. Yao Yao will understand later. Xiejin concentrated on spreading a bottle of medicine powder, glanced at the dark house, and lowered his voice. This house is full of mechanical devices. Any martial arts master who rushes in without understanding will be pierced into a sieve. Xian Yuanyao nodded silently. Since he is a master of mechanisms, the place where he lives must be foolproof, so the house must be full of mechanisms. In this way, there is no need for many guards at all. As long as there are mechanisms, the owner's safety can be ensured. However, such confidence will be overturned tonight. Encountering Xiejin, a guy who is more evil and does not play by the rules, no matter he is a master of mechanisms or poisons, he is destined to fall. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyes slightly and saw Xiejin taking off his robe. He frowned subconsciously. What are you doing? Take off your outer robe, Xiejin said. We just came from Yunping's house, and we have been stained with the smell of medicine powder. It is safer to take off the outer robe. Xian Yuanyao followed and took off his outer coat. Their sense of smell is extremely sensitive, and they will soon track us here. Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment, and suddenly understood something, with an incredible look in his eyes. No way. Why not? Xiejin smiled nonchalantly. I either don't do anything, or I will do something earth-shattering. He jumped off the wall and ran back quickly. Let's go. Xian Yuanyao threw his outer robe into the courtyard wall, turned around and followed Xiejin. Are we going back now? No. Xiejin paused slightly, then stretched out his hand to hold his shoulder. Take you to see an interesting scene. Interesting scene? Xian Yuanyao was puzzled, but saw Xiejin quickly took him back to the house where he had just poisoned. It was late at night and no one was in Yunping's house. The wriggling black spots in the courtyard seemed to move more violently and faster than before. Of course, no matter how excited the unformed insect eggs were, their range of activity was almost fixed in that place. So the eggs all over the ground were not the most important thing. The weird thing was that, in addition to those eggs, several poisonous creatures crawling out from every corner of the house were simply numbing. Even Xian Yuanyao, a military commander, felt the stiffness of blood flowing backwards. He squatted on the top of the wall, hiding behind the branches of a big tree, watching the black scorpions, long centipedes, small snakes slightly larger than earthworms but brightly colored, red and black spiders. Xian Yuanyao felt numb all over his body. These things were born with a way to make people both scared and disgusted. Don't be afraid, Xiejin squatted beside him. We are safe. Xian Yuanyao didn't say anything. He was not afraid, but just watching those poisonous creatures swimming towards the courtyard wall, subconsciously had the urge to run away, but rather than leaving, he had a stronger desire to kill all these things. But he held back. Xiejin didn't move, so he didn't move either. Those poisonous creatures seemed to have encountered something delicious, and they scurried around the wall like fish in a pond swarming for food. However, there was only the powder that Xiejin had just sprinkled on the wall, and nothing else. What was even more bizarre was that before long, several centipedes began to turn around and swim towards the wall, followed by small snakes, scorpions, and spiders spitting out their tongues. Xiejin put his arm around Xian Yuanyao's waist and flew up to a high branch. Hush! He put his hand against Xian Yuanyao's lips, signaling him to be quiet and wait and see, and whispered, watch the show. Xian Yuanyao was held in Xiejin's arms, and he watched those poisonous creatures swim over the high courtyard wall and onto the street. Xian Yuanyao's face changed slightly. These poisonous creatures could kill people. What if they hurt innocent people? There's no one on the street, don't worry, Xiejin whispered in his ear to comfort him, let's follow them. After he finished speaking, he held Xian Yuanyao's waist and flew away, and soon landed on a roof on the street. Xian Yuanyao soon discovered that these poisonous snakes, scorpions, centipedes, and poisonous spiders were crawling forward like a line, and after careful observation for a while, he found that these things actually completely covered the place where he and Xiejin had just walked, as if they were guided by something. The two followed behind and circled 2 streets. As expected, they found that these poisonous pets actually swam directly into the alley, climbed up along the courtyard wall of the mechanical master, and then disappeared one by one from sight. Now you understand what's going on. Xiejin let go of Xian Yuanyao's waist and smiled faintly. These poisonous creatures have a particularly sensitive sense of smell. The smell of these powders is like moths to fire for them. They frantically follow the smell. The mechanism in the yard can stop people, but it can't stop these poisonous creatures. So tonight is the death date of the mechanical master. Xian Yuanyao frowned. What will happen to these poisons? Isn't the fate of moths flying into the flame to be destroyed? Xiejin said. They have inhaled the deadly powder and will all die in 2 hours, but this midnight is enough for them to torment. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. When did you learn these skills? I have a lot of skills, you just haven't seen them before, Xiejin said arrogantly. Let's go, now that we have dealt with this master of poison and machinery, we can officially take action now. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 604. A master of poison, Xian Yuanyao turned his head and glanced in the direction of Yun Ping's house. He will also do it tonight. Well, I probably won't be able to see the sun tomorrow, Xiejin said in a calm tone, with a hint of nonchalance. Being bitten by the pet you raised can be regarded as a worthy death. Xian Yuanyao clicked his tongue, stretched out his hand and hooked his neck. A jin. Xiejin raised his eyebrows and said with obvious arrogance in his tone, does Yao Yao particularly admire me now? I really admire you, Xian Yuanyao said from the bottom of his heart. I admire you so much. Xiejin turned around and kissed his face. Will you pledge yourself to me tonight? Xian Yuanyao was about to get angry, but Xiejin suddenly changed his mind. Well, I guess we can't do it tonight. We have to go to the Yun family's old house. If everything goes well, it will take a while to get back. If it doesn't go well. No nonsense, Xian Yuanyao stopped him. I believe you have a firm grasp. Xiejin smiled. Yao Yao believes in me so much, so naturally I have to perform well. With that said, the two of them disappeared into the night with a flick of their bodies. Lu Yuan, the Yun family's agency master, and Yun Ping, the poison master, live not far from the Yun family's old house, making it easy to deal with emergencies at any time. So Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao started there and arrived at Yun in only half a quarter of an hour. Old house. Compared with the mechanism defense of Lu Yuanman's courtyard and the poisonous housekeeping pets in Yunping's yard, the defense of the Yun family's mansion is naturally not as rigorous as it is. In addition to the mechanisms and poisons, there are many expert guards that no outsider can easily break into. One of the reasons to go in. Xiejin stood outside the high courtyard wall. The narrow and dim corridor perfectly covered the two people's figures. However, the house was brightly lit, and his nightclothes seemed not to be of much use in hiding at this time. Xiejin walked quickly along the narrow corridor until he reached the remote northwest corner. He jumped lightly and stood on the wall in an instant. The northwest corner is an empty and abandoned courtyard, and the defense is relatively loose. However, the courtyard gate in the northwest corner is separated from the central courtyard by an invisible trapdoor, which directly blocks the possibility of ordinary people trying to break in through this weak spot. Xiejin gestured to Xian Yuanyao, and Xian Yuanyao jumped up. They both climbed over the wall and entered the deserted yard. Xiejin took out the last bottle of medicinal powder on his body. Don't you use it sparingly, Xian Yuanyao felt a little distressed. It took a whole day to prepare it, and you plan to use it all in one night. It took me a whole day just for tonight. Xiejin went around the entire abandoned courtyard and sprinkled the medicinal powder twice, once along the root of the courtyard wall, and once again around the center of the courtyard, and then threw the bottle away casually. The Yun family, there are too many evil spirits, so that we can achieve twice the result with half the effort, save our time and energy, and also increase the progress and smoothness of things. Xian Yuanyao hummed. The two of them were far away from the circle of medicine powder, hiding under a big tree, looking up at the sky. Xiejin said calmly, it's a pity that the moonlight is not very good tonight, otherwise we would be considered as the moon before the flowers. How long has it been, and you haven't made it official yet? Xian Yuanyao scolded. If you want to flirt, wait until you get back. Xiejin's smile deepened. Can you flirt when you get back? The little leopard is really getting used to this way of getting along. I'm afraid that after I go back, Yao Yao will keep a gentlemanly distance from me again. Xiejin sighed, when can we sleep in the same bed? Xian Yuan Yao. Yao Yao, before we go back to the imperial capital, should we cook the cooked rice? Xiejin began to wonder. After the cooked rice is cooked, the Lord will have no choice but to object even if he wants to. Xian Yuan Yao. Yao Yao. Shut up. Xiejin reached out and held his waist. Yao Yao is really evil. Xian Yuan Yao was about to say something when he suddenly heard footsteps at the courtyard door, and then someone exclaimed, "Look! What's going on? Why are they all coming out? I don't know. Where is Mr. Ping? Go and call him over. They are crawling towards the backyard, as if something is leading them. Go and have a look first." There were 4 people speaking, but 2 of them hurriedly turned around to report. The most likely reason was that one went to see Mr. Ping and the other went to report the family head. 2 other people were coming to the backyard. There was a clang sound. The secret door mechanism was opened, and a black iron secret door slowly opened, making a dull sound. Xian Yuan Yao and Xiejin looked at each other, and when the 2 figures came this way, they dodged out at lightning speed. One person dealt with the other, and in an instant they killed the 2 guards who could not even see the figures clearly. Under the palm of your hand. The poor 2 guards died before they could make a sound. Xian Yuan Yao and Xiejin dragged the 2 of them behind the big tree where no one could see them, and asked them to lean against the tree trunk, away from the place where the medicine powder was. Quickly taking off their guard uniforms and putting them on, Xiejin and Xian Yuan Yao raised their feet and kicked the bodies of the 2 guards to the corner. Then they turned around and rushed towards the central courtyard through the open iron gate. Countless poisonous scorpions, centipedes, small snakes, and poisonous spiders crawled fast or slowly, heading towards the corner where the medicinal powder was without stopping. They were still in such a frenzied state of grabbing food until the medicinal powder was sucked up. They all swarmed towards the 2 corpses. The Yun family mansion has pavilions and towers, and the layout is intricate. Unlike the sparsely populated northwest corner, you will find that the patrol guards are one after another after entering the house, and there are countless open and secret sentries, almost without interruption. The rules of the Yun family are also strict. Even if the poison that should stay in the underground palace is out of control, the guards who know the situation will take the lead in reporting to the person who should report it, and will not shout and cause unnecessary panic. Therefore, at this moment, the guards in the house are still strict and orderly, without any confusion. The most important thing is that the front and backyards are brightly lit everywhere, and several lanterns are hung in various corners, illuminating the house. Xiejin and Xian Yuan Yao hid behind the pillars and did not move for a long time. Xian Yuan Yao thought to himself that the internal layout of the Yun family is comparable to the famous royal palace in the imperial capital, and even more strictly guarded than the royal palace. Even the top masters in the world would find it difficult to enter and exit freely here. Suddenly, a scream rang out, "Snake!" This scream immediately startled the guards who were patrolling peacefully. They turned around and saw a small, bright red snake swimming towards them from the backyard. Those who knew it were so scared that their scalps exploded in an instant. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 605. This kind of slender red snake is not uncommon in this house, but it usually has no chance to come out because it is highly venomous. Yunping has always been responsible for raising and driving it, and it stays where it should stay. Why did you escape tonight? No one of the expert guards dared to approach it. They were about to think of a way to capture it without getting poisoned. When they turned around, they found a huge spider coming into view. Their pupils shrank suddenly, and then a long centipede appeared. It also crawled over, and then came a bright red snake, a black scorpion that was almost the size of an adult's palm. One after another, they are not at all the obedient people they usually are. Instead, they are swimming and crawling around as if they have finally escaped from trouble. The sight of them makes people feel numb all over the body and the blood flows backwards. Even these well-trained guards couldn't help but turn pale at this time, and kept retreating, fearing that if they were touched by one of the poisons, they would be poisoned and die immediately. What's going on? Why did all these things escape? Come quickly. Go and ask Mr. Ping to come over. Everyone, stay back. Don't touch them. What happened? These poisons seem to be crawling from the northwest backyard. How did they appear there? No matter how strict the defense was and how powerful the guards were, they still lost their composure when faced with these poisonous things in front of them. Their faces turned pale, and the defense was instantly in chaos. Xiejin suddenly rushed out at this moment. Ah! Mr. Ping! Come quickly, call Mr. Ping. Not good, Xian Yuanyao yelled in a coordinated manner, these things are uncontrolled and will burrow everywhere. Let everyone who is sleeping get up quickly, otherwise it will be too dangerous. As soon as the sentence came out, it was obviously recognized by others. The guards seemed to be awakening from a dream, with a look of fear on their faces. They said one after another, quickly, inform the master and madam. There are also young master and young lady. It seems that the master is not asleep yet, he is in the study room. The old man has gone to bed, come here. Hurry and take a look in the old man's yard and inform the guards there that the poisons are out of control. Tell them to be on guard and don't let these things hurt the old man. The male leads the outside and the female leads the inside. The courtyard for the master and the young gentleman is in the upper courtyard on the east side, and the courtyard for the ladies and ladies is in the inner courtyard on the west side. The guards are running around here and there, their steps are messy, and they have to pay attention to their steps while walking quickly, for fear that the little ones will suddenly come out halfway. If the poison bites you, even if the gods come, they will be unable to save you. Xian Yuanyao and Xiejin looked at each other in the air, with clear smiles in their eyes, and quickly followed the guards to the main courtyard of the house. The poisonous creatures were uncontrollable and went their own way, running around the house. Some climbed up the trees, some climbed up the corridor, some swam towards the garden, and some entered the courtyard where the masters lived. The guards instantly became a mess, dodging and running, and could no longer maintain strict defensive order. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao successfully sneaked into the main courtyard amid the chaos. They were wearing guard clothes and were agile, so even if the lights in the house were bright, they could hide their appearance as much as possible to avoid suspicion. Coming to their identities, the situation was urgent at this time, and all the nursing staff had nothing to do but look at their faces, and no one had time to look at their faces. However, the study room has always been an important place in the house, so it is naturally more heavily guarded. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao ran over quickly and started shouting from a distance, "Chief Family Master! It's not good!" The guards outside the study were immediately on alert, and all their swords were unsheathed. All the poisons have escaped. They are everywhere in the house. Ah, snakes! Xiejin jumped to avoid a small red snake at his feet. He didn't notice that the nursing staff were on guard and still roared loudly. Quickly led Yun Yi, the head of the Yun family, who was staying in the study, out. "Sir, all the poisons Mr. Ping raised have escaped out of control. Now they are everywhere in the house. The situation is urgent. Please make the decision, head of the family." The study door was opened, and a middle-aged man in dark blue robes hurriedly walked out with a cold face. "What are you yelling about? Are there any rules?" There were 3 people following behind him, including 2 men in their 40s and a young man in his 20s. At this time, all 4 of them were staring in Xiejin's direction with stern expressions. Xiejin jumped happily, but he just didn't want people to see his face clearly. "Snake. Master, please find a safe place to avoid." "There are too many to avoid. The poisonous spiders are here too, and there are scorpions. They are running too fast. What should I do?" Xian Yu and Yao jumped onto the railing and quickly climbed up the big tree opposite. They are everywhere. Where is Mr. Ping? What happened to the thing? Wasn't it fine before? Only then did Yunyi realize what had happened. His eyes fell on the little snake crawling down the corridor, and his expression suddenly changed. What's going on? Why is there such a thing in the main courtyard? Several other people also saw it. Their eyes suddenly changed, and they subconsciously wanted to retreat to the study. You can't enter the study. The guards in the main courtyard stared at the flexible little snake with vigilance, and saw an astonishing black scorpion crawling out of the darkness. They clenched the weapons in their hands, and their eyes were filled with excitement. It's the fear. Where did these things crawl out of? When Yunyi heard this, he turned around and hurried away in one direction. The three people behind him quickly followed. A dozen guards followed closely to protect his safety, while the others continued to stay on duty outside the study. Although they were a little confused by the sudden changes in front of them, they did not let any holes in their defense. Of course, whether there are loopholes or not is not important to Xiejin and Xianyu and Yao, and their goal is not the study room, and the temporary calm here will soon become out of control, because those small poisonous creatures will soon occupy every corner of the house, causing panic among the people in the whole house. Until 2 hours later, the poisonous creatures will die collectively, and the house can return to peace. And the person who can drive and control these poisonous creatures is dead. No one can control the situation within 2 hours. How many survivors are left in the house by then depends on their luck. Yunyi went to the direction of the main courtyard bedroom. Xiejing glanced at Xianyu and Yao and said in a hurried voice, "Hurry, go to the east to inform the young master. Let the young master get up quickly. Can't sleep, it's too dangerous." The two followed Yunyi's guard team and went to the destination step by step. 2 hours are enough for them to complete the task smoothly. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 606. The courtyard where Yunyi lived was called Longtang Pavilion. Xiejin and Xianyu and Yao glanced at the several gilded characters on the plaque above, and a sneer flashed in their eyes. Longtang Pavilion? Ambition is not small. Why is it so quiet here? A guard in front suddenly spoke in a solemn tone, "Master, be careful, something seems to be wrong." Yunyi's face was as gloomy as if covered with ice. When he walked out of the courtyard gate, he found that there was no one outside the gate. "Where are the people here?" he said coldly. "Are they all dead?" The guard who followed him pushed open the courtyard gate, and his face changed instantly. Indeed, they were all dead. The bodies of the guards were lying in the yard, and it seemed that there were more than 20 people. Yunyi's face changed completely, becoming frightened and angry, and his face was surging like a raging sea. The guards came forward to check, then turned around, their faces unable to hide their fear. "The whole body is black, they were bitten to death by poisonous creatures." "Where is Yunping?" Yunyi could no longer control his anger, and shouted at the guards, "Let Yunping roll over immediately. I want an explanation. Why did these damn poisonous creatures all go out of control tonight?" The guard replied tremblingly, "Someone has already gone to ask Master Yun." Xianyu and Yao waited silently in the shadows outside, trying not to attract attention, but now he already understood that those poisonous creatures should have run out from under the Longtang Pavilion. That is, the palace they were looking for tonight was under the Longtang Pavilion. Speaking of this, he really couldn't help but admire Yunyi. In addition to the mechanism under the place where he slept, there were countless poisonous creatures living all year round. Even if those poisonous creatures were controlled, he was really brave. After recalling the map of the underground palace and the mechanisms in his mind, Xian Yuanyao sighed softly. Seeing the guards in front of him start to follow Yunyi inside, he and Xiejin also followed. Master, a guard walking beside Yunyi spoke hesitantly, should we wait until Master Ping comes before going in? What if there is something inside? Yunyi's face was gloomy, and even if he didn't speak, he couldn't hide the rage on his face. Seeing that he didn't answer, the guards didn't dare to persuade him anymore, and followed him in silently. Carefully bypassing the corpse on the ground, Yunyi walked into the room and turned a vase in the corner. Soon a dull sound was heard. If it were in the past, the guards would never enter the underground palace. In addition to a few confidants of the master of the Yun family who could go down with Yunyi, only Yun Ping, a master of expelling poison, and Lu Yuan, a master of mechanisms, could enter and exit freely. Of course, they had to report to the master of the family every time they entered and exited, and only after obtaining consent could they do so. But the situation tonight was special. The guards outside were all dead, and the poisons below were all out of control. Yun Yi, the head of the Yun family, was naturally afraid of death, and was even more afraid that there were assassins waiting for him below, so after the mechanical stone door was opened, he ordered the first few guards to go down and check the situation. The 4 guards walked down the stone steps of the secret passage carefully. Yun Yi followed the 4 guards silently, and the rest of the guards followed closely, protecting the distinguished head of the Yun family firmly. The stone steps of the secret passage were not long, and soon they arrived in a narrow corridor, and the light became brighter. There were several night pearls the size of a child's fist hanging above the wall, emitting a luster as bright as daylight at night. In addition to luxury, people walking here could no longer hide their true appearance. Although Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao had changed their appearance did not exist among the Yun family guards. If all the Yun family guards knew each other, then as long as the guards walking in front looked back slightly, they could see clearly that Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao had sneaked in. Fortunately, the guards were all frightened by the poison and were in a state of panic. They just stared at their feet, fearing that some small snakes or scorpions would suddenly jump out and kill them if they were not careful, so they had no time to look back. After walking through the long corridor, there were 3 forks in the road ahead. Yun Yi pressed an inconspicuous bulge on the wall. Xiejin's eyes were always on his movements, so at this time he had seen as many as 6 identical bulges on the wall. These bulges were definitely not pressed randomly. If you pressed the wrong one, you would most likely face the result of thousands of arrows or be nailed into a meat pie by the nail board falling from above. Moreover, Lu Yuan, the master of the mechanism, was said to be able to adjust the function of these mechanism buttons at any time, so even if a master mastered the method of opening the mechanism here, once Lu Yuan was here, he could shoot the assassins who sneaked into the underground palace into a sieve at any time. This was also the reason why Xiejin wanted to kill Yunping and Lu Yuan tonight. If Yunping dies, there will be no one to subdue the poisonous creatures that are rampaging tonight. If Lu Yuan dies, there will be no way to adjust the mechanism here. As long as Xiejin remembers the opening method here, he can enter and exit at any time without worries. After the bulge was pressed, the same dull sound came from the front of one of the forked roads. It was the stone door that was opened, but standing in their current position, the stone door could not be seen. The 4 leading guards walked forward, Yun Yi followed and continued to move forward, and the other guards followed. The underground palace was quiet, with only the slight sound of a few people walking. After walking forward for a while, Xiejin found that the road was blocked in front, or it was not blocked, but a huge deep pit appeared, and there were several large and small stone pits next to it, and the smell slowly diffused in the air. Xian Yuanyao understood. This is the resting place of those poisonous creatures on weekdays. There is a smell here that makes them obedient. If nothing unexpected happens, they will stay in the deep pit and wait for the people who raise them to feed them every day. Once the smell of a stranger appears here, these poisonous creatures will quickly crawl out, bite the invader to death, eat the flesh and bones bit by bit, and make a person disappear in the most cruel way. When Xian Yuanyao thought of this, he couldn't help but admire Xie Jin's scheming again. But he was more curious about the powder he prepared, which could make all the poisonous creatures smell the smell from a long distance, scramble to swim out of here, and not a single one was left. The atmosphere was quiet and depressing. Yun Yi's face was extremely ugly, so ugly that no words could describe him. Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao stood at the back of the guards. Both of them lowered their heads in silence, with their hands slightly clenched, ready to kill everyone present at any time if an accident occurred. But they would not take action easily unless it was absolutely necessary. After all, there are still many traps here, and it is always much faster to have someone lead the way than to grope by yourself. Fortunately, Yun Yi was controlled by his furious emotions at this time, and had no time to be distracted. He quickly turned back to the place where the secret door was opened and pressed another protrusion on the wall again. Another dull thunder-like sound sounded, and the guards walked towards the fork on the left. Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao followed without saying a word. After walking for a while, a study-like layout appeared in front of them. There was a huge mahogany bookshelf against the wall, on which were listed various books, as well as blue, red, and black bottles and jars. A huge desk was placed in the middle, and on the desk were the 4 treasures of the study for writing and painting, and no other important things were seen. Xie Jin's eyes were like lightning, secretly searching for the places where those important evidence might be placed. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 607. Yun Yi walked to the desk, his eyes focused on the corner of the desk. Xie Jin's eyebrows were slightly lowered, but he was paying attention to his movements from the corner of his eyes. At this time, he saw him staring at a brush on the desk, a white jade with no trace of it. Pen wash with no impurities. Xie Jin's heart moved slightly. Yun Yi watched for a moment, then raised his hand to turn the white jade pen washer, and suddenly heard a roar. The bookshelf slowly moved aside, and a new world appeared in front of him. The jewels are so dazzling that they almost blind people. Xie Jin subconsciously averted his eyes and temporarily adjusted to the too bright light in the room. After a while, he followed Yun Yi and walked in. There is a room full of black boxes, all of which contain golden ingots and nothing else. After a quick glance, there are at least 20 boxes. The Yun family is indeed rich. Anyone who sees the wealth in front of them can't help but be greedy. Xie Jin looked at the room calmly. It was a completely enclosed secret room. There were no buttons on the white walls, and the stone door could only be opened from the outside. If a person is trapped here, he is afraid that the sky will not respond, the earth will not work, and he will starve to death here. Yun Yi turned around and ordered, "Come over and see if there is anything missing in these boxes." The guards were oblivious and walked towards the box after hearing his words. Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao looked at each other, exchanged a look, and silently walked towards the secret room. However, at this moment, Yun Yi suddenly walked out quickly. Just as he was about to walk out of the stone door, he heard a startling voice behind him. "Call, no. There's a snake." The guards were immediately frightened and began to avoid subconsciously, looking down at the ground in panic. Only Xie Jin reacted very quickly and rushed out. Xian Yuanyao stayed in the secret room and watched the stone door closing little by little in front of his eyes. "I was scared to death," Xiejin lowered his head and covered his heart, making a frightened and anxious look. Then he looked up at Yunyi as if he thought of something. Is the master okay? Turning to look at the closed stone door, he asked in surprise, how come they are locked in? Master, this. You're quite fast. Yunyi's eyes fell on his face, his eyes like a sharp blade, probing, why did you come out? Ah, Xiejin was stunned. I heard there was a snake, so I was so scared that I ran outside. When did the guards of the Yun family become so timid? Yunyi's eyes became colder and colder, looking at Xiejin as if he had spit poison. What's your name? Why haven't I seen you before? When he said this, his body was leaning against the desk, and his hand reaching back was touching the position of the pen washer. For the record, head of the family. Xiejin bowed slightly. This subordinate is. 5 fingers bent, and they probed Yunyi's neck like lightning. Before Yunyi could hear what he said, he suddenly felt difficulty breathing, his pupils shrank suddenly, and both fear and anger remained in his eyes. You. Xiejin strangled his neck with his right hand, and reached behind him with his left hand without haste, forcefully taking away his hand that only wanted to do evil. Master Yun is very vigilant. Do you suspect that someone is following you so quickly? Yunyi's eyes widened in shock and anger, and he tried hard to break free from his grasp, but only a ouch sound came out of his throat, and he could not utter a complete sentence. As expected, those who do great things must be ruthless. Xiejin smiled. Would you rather kill 1,000 people by mistake than let one go? Ouch. It's a pity that the head of the Yun family is still missing a move. Xiejin didn't even give him a chance to question him. As soon as he finished his sentence, he simply broke his neck with a strong force. Crack. Yunyi's face was stiff, his head dropped to one side, and then he fell to the ground with a bang. Xiejin looked at him coldly. You are smart. Want to trap them all in a secret room? Why don't you see if you can run away? Xiejin kicked his body away and stood in front of the desk, looking at the 4 treasures of the study on the desk. After a moment, he reached out and turned the pen to wash. There was a boom. The bookshelf moved to the side again. Xiejin turned around and saw the 3-dimensional face of the little leopard appeared in front of him. He was holding a bunch of things in his bulging arms. Only a pair of bright eyes were full of brilliance. Got it? In the secret room, all the guards fell to the ground, and no one survived. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. Didn't you take the opportunity to decorate yourself with gold? Am I a money-minded person? You can't even get enough evidence, so you still want to covet that little bit of gold? Xian Yuanyao took out a few books and rosters from his arms and threw them to Xiejin. Take a little, there are too many, I can't finish them all by myself. If you lose 2 copies along the way, you will lose more than you gain. That's it. Xiejin casually opened the rosters and account books. There were blue-covered ones and white-covered ones, each marked and classified. The evidence of the Yun family's crimes are all here. No one on the list can escape. And this Xian Yuan took out several letters. This is a secret letter that Yunyi and Susi have exchanged over the years. It mentions the secret of Susi's life experience. It should be the Yun family's bargaining chip to control him over the years. Xiejin neatly packed up the account books, rosters, and letters, took out the black towel from his arms, wrapped it up, tied it up, and stuffed it into Xian Yuanyao's arms. Take it. Xian Yuanyao frowned. What are you doing? If something unexpected happens later, I'll cover you and leave. Xiejin pointed to his brain. It's easy to work here, and you don't have to worry about bad things if you stay, but you dash. Stop talking nonsense. Xian Yuanyao opened the veil again and stuffed all the letters into his arms. Dare to say that my brain is not working? I will settle accounts with you when I go back. Now it is best to find a way to leave here. Yao Yao. Shut up. Xian Yuanyao scolded coldly. Don't forget what the master said. If you are really caught by them, don't plan to get out alive. I won't come to save you. Xiejin was silent for a moment, and a gloomy look appeared on his face. Sure enough, you can see through people's hearts in times of trouble. Xian Yuanyao raised his hand and hit him with a slap, but I will write a letter to the master to see if the master is willing to come and rescue you from the tiger's den in person. Xiejin sighed, Yao Yao, we are all adults, don't threaten and complain like a child, this is not good. Xian Yuanyao didn't have time to talk nonsense with him, turned around and walked out. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time, let's go quickly. The two hurried out and soon left the entrance of the underground palace and successfully entered the bedroom. Stopping, Xian Yuanyao walked to the corner and stared at the vase for a moment, with a malicious light flashing in his eyes. Yao Yao. Let them stay down there forever and sleep forever. Xian Yuanyao said, reaching out to slap the edge of the vase, and the vase turned into a pile of debris. Before Xiejing could stop it, the entrance to the mechanism was completely destroyed. There are so many gold and silver treasures in the underground palace that are to be added to the national treasury. Xiejin looked at him, Yao Yao, you. Ah. Xian Yuanyao was stunned, what should I do then? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 608. What should we do? Xiejin said calmly, the job has been messed up. Go back and prepare to be beaten with a cane. After saying that, he turned around and walked out. Xian Yuanyao curled his lips. He didn't expect Xiejin to learn to scare him. After a moment of silence, he didn't know what he thought of. He smiled with amusement, Ajin, do you think the master has the function of curing children's crying? Xiejing glanced at him, you don't look worried at all. What is there to worry about? Xian Yuanyao walked out with him and pondered for a moment, let's just pretend that we didn't see those boxes, okay? Definitely not. Xiejin patted his arms, the account books are all there. There are accounts but no money. What do you think? Xian Yuanyao was silent. Although the master would definitely not think that they were embezzling, the money in the account books was gone. At that time, the ministers would definitely suspect that they had embezzled the money. Xiejin smiled nonchalantly, after you get away safely, you can try to please me and shut me up. Then, maybe I will agree to destroy this account book. Xian Yuanyao said calmly, you dream faster. Destroy the body? Do you really think everyone is a fool? The Yun family is such a big family, and the gold and silver they embezzled are nowhere to be found. Do they not need to give an explanation? The lights outside Longtang Pavilion have been extinguished, but someone suddenly walked towards the side with a torch not far away. Xiejin turned his eyes slightly, and took Xian Yuanyao's waist and swooped out. Who? The man holding the torch saw a figure flashing from a distance, and soon disappeared from sight. He immediately shouted, stop! Xiejin took Xian Yuanyao and flew up the tree, then tiptoed and moved flexibly to the second floor of the attic opposite. He flew around the house neatly like a ghost at night, and his target was still the abandoned backyard in the northwest corner. At this time, the whole house of the Yun family was actually in chaos. Many people in the house were bitten to death by poisonous insects. At present, people were in a panic. Those who were afraid of death were hiding and running around in panic. Those who were not afraid of death, who was not afraid of death? The delicate ladies had been placed in a safe place. Those maids and servants who had no martial arts and whose lives were worthless were more afraid of poisonous insects than being killed by people, so the orders of the stewards had no effect on them. They ran around in a mess. However, they didn't know where to hide. Xiejin walked into the attic and stood in front of the window to appreciate the chaotic scene in the house. The torches illuminated the ground more and more brightly, and even those poisonous insects that made people's scalps numb could be clearly seen. Although some of them were dead, no one dared to approach. Ajin Xian Yuanyao looked through the window at the northwest wasteland, frowning, the defense over there seems to be tighter. Xiejin turned his head and said lightly, a lean camel is bigger than a horse. Even if half of the Yun family dies tonight, the remaining half is enough to guard the entrances and exits of this house. Then which way should we go later? The most dangerous place is the safest place, Xiejin said. We will go from where we came from. Xian Yuanyao nodded. Yun Teng should come forward. Xiejin's eyebrows deepened slightly. This old patriarch has accumulated a lot of prestige, and no one dares to disobey his orders. The guards of the Yun family are different from those maids and servants who screamed in fear. They are all strictly trained. Accidental loss of control can only bring short-term panic to the guards. They will calm down soon and think of the fact that someone has invaded, and then make the most rigorous hunting action in the fastest time. Whether the person sent to find Yun Ping is dead or alive and brings back the news of Yun Ping's death, Yun Teng should have thought of the invasion and arranged defenses. It may be more difficult for us to escape than expected. Xiejin shook Xian Yuanyao's hand. Yao Yao, let me cover your departure. Shut up, Xian Yuanyao interrupted him calmly. We are fast enough. It only took a short time from entering to leaving. No matter how powerful Yun Teng is, he just woke up from a dream. In such a short time, there is no time to make careful arrangements. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. Yao Yao. If you want to fool me, find a way to fool me. Xian Yuanyao glanced at him. Don't forget what I do. As a military general, the deployment of military defenses on the border battlefield is not a problem. How can the deployment of a mere house fool him? If it is really that urgent, can Xiejin have the leisure to show affection here? Xiejin sighed and was about to say something, but was stopped by Xian Yuanyao. Let's go quickly, he said. We'll talk when we get back. Even if they were confident that they could get away, they couldn't waste time getting away, otherwise they would soon become helpless. The two left the attic and quickly headed towards the northwest wasteland. Stop, an angry command came from behind. Come on. Catch them. Archers, get ready. Catch them alive. Accompanied by a flurry of footsteps, some guards hurriedly chased after them, and some archers set up their bows and arrows from all directions, with cold arrows pointing in the direction where Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao left. Stop. Otherwise I'll shoot. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao ran away without looking back, as if they hadn't heard anything at all. A stern command came from behind. Shoot. Whoosh. 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 Arrows rained down, carrying a cold murderous aura. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao seemed to have eyes behind them. They dodged the rain of arrows very nimbly and rolled on the ground quickly. However, they jumped out as if frightened. Snake. Lu Yuan, the deep and stern voice sounded again. Where is Lu Yuan? Turn on the mechanism, I will make them die without a burial place. Old Patriarch Yun, you should pray for your own good fortune. Xiejin threw an arrogant sneer from afar. You used the lives of the Yun family to feed these poisonous insects you raised yourself, which is also a worthy death for you. How many of them can survive after tonight is your luck. As he said, the two figures disappeared from sight in an instant at a speed faster than the arrows. Shoot. Countless arrows broke through the tranquility of the night and shot towards the direction where the two left, like a dense arrow net, determined to shoot the intruders into hedgehogs. However, the two people they wanted to shoot had already escaped from the arrow net and disappeared. Chase them. Yun Teng's face turned pale, and he gave an order in anger. Seal off the entire city, search overnight, and never allow them to escape Shangning. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 609. As soon as Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao left the Yun family safely, they took off their guard clothes and threw them away. The two of them were wearing black night clothes and shuttled through the darkness, like ghosts at night, flashing and swooping at a very fast speed, and in an instant, the Yun family guards who were chasing them lost their direction. Nineth young master, a man rushed over from the side and soon arrived in front of Xiejin and Xianyuan Yao. Masters, stand by, is there anything you need from your subordinates? Ninth young master. Yun Yi is dead. Yun Teng is so angry right now, he will soon order the city to be closed. You go to Xiling to mobilize troops before they do. Xiejin paused slightly, his voice was leisurely and lazy. Yao Yao, you go with him. Xianyuan Yao frowned, didn't you say that there is no need to mobilize troops? I said not necessarily, not Xiejin corrected, tonight's dynamics are a bit big. Yun Yi's death and the destruction of the underground palace affairs mechanism will definitely make Yun Teng desperate. To prevent him from doing something unreasonable, we must first control the Yun family. His words were too rational and calm, and every sentence went straight to the point, which made Xianyuan Yao unable to refute. Originally, he also wanted to mobilize troops to calm the situation after getting the evidence, but Xiejin said that it might not be necessary, so he thought it was really not necessary. At this time, after listening to Xiejin's words, the two people's ideas actually coincided. Moreover, the destruction of the mechanism was entirely his credit. Xianyuan Yao couldn't help but feel guilty and turned to look at the man who was talking. What's your name? Sun Xiao. You have to listen to me when I mobilize the troops later. Xianyuan Yao reminded him in advance, don't do anything reckless. Sun Xiao nodded, I know. But the city gate is closed now. Xianyuan Yao frowned, how do we get out of the city? Don't worry, I have a way to get them to open the city gate. Sun Xiao said, after the army is transferred here, I also have a way to let the army enter the city directly. Xianyuan Yao was slightly shocked when he heard this. This man is also very capable, but he listens to Xiejin's orders. How many unknown identities does Xiejin have hidden? As a powerful person in the imperial capital and the legitimate son of the prime minister, he should have enjoyed glory and wealth in the imperial city, with no worries about food and clothing. If nothing unexpected happened in his life, he could almost enjoy the same noble treatment as the prince. But in Shangning, he could find Chu Nanyi's medicine shop as if he were in his own backyard, buy some poisons that ordinary people would never buy, and mix those bottles of medicine powder that even famous doctors could not mix. He was as free and easy in and out of the Yun family as in his own backyard, with quick reactions, quick eyes and hands, and martial arts that were beyond his imagination, especially his light skills that made people admire him. Xianyuan Yao had a new look at Xiejin, but this was obviously not a good time to talk in detail. The two of them quickly split up, and Xianyuan Yao and Sun Xiao went out of the city to mobilize troops. Xiling was only 60 miles away from here, and they could arrive in half an hour at a fast speed. Before dawn, the soldiers and horses of Xiling surrounded Shangning city, and by then, all the people of the Yun family would have no chance to escape, not to mention the large-scale search at the blocked city gates. Xiejin returned to his residence, washed off his makeup, changed into a snow-white pajamas, and instantly recovered the appearance of a lazy nobleman. However, this alone was not enough. In the middle of the night, he carefully applied some special powder on his face in front of the mirror, which only made his handsome face pale and sickly, looking like a weak young man who had not recovered from a long illness. After all this, he walked to the bed and leaned on it, holding a book in his hand, lowering his eyebrows and reading attentively, and soon there was a knock on the door. The maid came in with a bowl of medicine. Young master, the medicine is ready. Xiejin coughed softly, and a few drops of blood came out of his throat, splashing on the pages of the book, which was shocking. The maid was startled and walked over quickly. Master, is the condition worse again? Xiejin looked up and raised his eyebrows at her. You got into the role quickly. Master, you are good at training, the maid replied with a smile, and then asked, Master, you are so fast, why don't you leave Shangning with Master Xianyuan overnight after you succeeded? Just now I said that my master is good at training, and now I am stupid again. Xiejin took the medicine bowl, took a sip, and immediately frowned bitterly. the Yun family is so powerful, we can just take the evidence and leave. They know the consequences of the evidence falling into the hands of the court, and would rather fight to the death, so they will definitely go out in full force to hunt us down. The maid thought it made sense and nodded slowly, yes. Even if I have someone under my command, if both sides really reach the point of life and death, more innocent people will definitely die. Xiejin said, what if Yun Ten becomes crazy after we leave and takes out his anger on the innocent people of Shangning? If he really dares to let innocent people suffer, it will definitely not be a matter of 5 canes. The maid listened and still felt that it made sense. Young master, what you said is very true. Xiejin glanced at her, put the medicine aside, and decided not to continue to suffer. Besides, the crimes committed by the Yun family should be dealt with by the court and announced to the world, rather than fighting to the death like the Jianghu vendettas. Dispatching troops to siege is the best way. The maid was full of admiration, and nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Young master is still powerful. So I can't leave. Xiejin's voice became more casual, and he accepted the maid's compliment calmly. We must control this place, cut off the hands and feet of the Yun family, and let them have nowhere to vent their anger. The admiration on the maid's face became more and more obvious. That's enough. Xiejin flicked her forehead, you don't have to flatter me so obviously. Girls should be more subtle and reserved. The maid curled her lips, don't all men like this? I've heard this a lot, it's no longer fresh. Xiejin said, how is Yayun? His leg disease is getting better, but it will take some time for him to stand up. The maid replied, although this young man has the blood of the Yun family, his temperament is different from the selfish and dirty Yun family. Xiejin said, pay attention to send someone to protect his safety. If something happens to the Yun family tonight, the first person Yun Ten will suspect before he has any clues will be Yayun. The news that Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao came to Shangning did not alarm anyone. With the experts of Juxiao Pavilion escorting them, the Yun family did not have the ability to find out their whereabouts. However, Yayun is the only person who has conflicts with the Yun family in recent times. So if something happened to the Yun family tonight, the cunning Yun Ten would inevitably suspect Yayun. The maid nodded, don't worry, sir. We have sent someone to protect you. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 610. This night is destined to be unstable for Shang Ningyun's family. Yun Ten was so shocked and furious that he almost wanted to tear the 2 thieves who had caused all this chaos into pieces. However, he, who had been in charge of the Yun family for decades, had a deep mind. At first, he suspected that the 2 thieves were not the only ones who did it. Because they drove poisonous insects, caused chaos in the house, successfully entered Longtang Pavilion, destroyed the mechanism, and escaped smoothly under the thousands of arrows fired by the Yun family guards, these actions could never be accomplished by just 2 people. Although the Longtang Pavilion mechanism had been destroyed and it was still impossible to know the situation in the secret room, he speculated that the worst outcome was that the evidence had been obtained. In this case, it proves that the mechanisms in Longtang Pavilion are useless to them. Who on earth has such the ability to fly into the sky and escape from the earth? Yun Ten ordered a search of the entire house, not sparing any part of it, and after learning that Yun Ping and Lu Yuan were dead, he was extremely angry and ordered to kill all the out-of-control poisonous insects in the house, but the so-called smart counterattack being fooled by cleverness may be talking about Yun Ten at this time. The old treacherous man has been cunning all his life, but tonight he was fooled by 2 young people without any backlash. If you kill the poisonous insects, the smell of blood belonging to the same kind will inevitably be emitted, which will directly cause the crazy backlash of other poisonous insects, and they will tear them apart at all costs. They bite all the flesh and blood in front of them, as long as they are breathing, they will not let go. The small snakes are agile and hard to guard against. A bite on the legs and feet will directly cause venom. The poisonous spider suddenly spun its web down from the tree, which shocked people, but they didn't even have time to react before they were killed. Scorpions and centipedes are equally difficult to guard against. As a result, it naturally caused panic and chaos. And the poisonous insects also died one by one in the process. It was okay to kill each other with the Yun family, it was okay to hurt both sides, and there was no problem in dying together. Anyway, the second half of the night was more exciting and ecstatic than the first half. Seeing the chaos in the house, Yun Ten was so angry that he thought about fainting on the spot. He had lived and been majestic all his life, but when he had already stepped into the coffin, something like this happened, which was really exhausting. When those experts returned after chasing Xian Yuanyao and Xiejin, Yun Ten remembered and quickly ordered, "Have people guard the city gate. If anyone tries to leave the city at night, arrest him immediately." The first thing he thought of was to seal off the city, trap the two thieves in the city, and then slowly hunt them down. It was already late at night, and it was impossible for ordinary people to leave the city at this time. Anyone who wanted to go out of the city must not be an ordinary person, unless he wanted to escape for his life. But he thought wrong again. It is true that some people wanted to leave the city, but they left the city not to escape, but to mobilize troops. In the chaos, Yun Ten looked at the Yun family in a mess, and now he had no intention of thinking about deeper and more complicated things, such as the murderous intent that destroyed the world. He had already lost his mind. The usually smart and cunning staff were now facing life and death threats and had no energy to make any more plans or strategies. Everything is progressing according to Xiejin's plan. Of course, when old foxes make miscalculations, little foxes like him will naturally not be considerate in everything. After bathing, I changed my clothes and even put on my pale makeup. I was just waiting for the pursuers to go door to door to search and arrest me, but I waited for almost half the night but there was no movement. The decoctions placed on the tables aside have already cooled down, but no sound has been heard outside. Xiejin couldn't help but wonder, could it be that those poisonous insects were so powerful that all the Yun family members died? In fact, he overestimated the action and decision-making power that an old man should have after encountering a sudden change. If his energy was not as strong as before, it would not be a surprise for the head of the Yun family to remain in power until his death. It is normal for older people to have less energy than young people. Of course, this cannot be blamed on Xiejin's miscalculation. It is better to overestimate the enemy than to underestimate him. Time passed little by little. Cleaning up the aftermath began in the Yun family mansion. Not many poisonous insects were left. The originally orderly and well-guarded house seemed to have become an empty house in an instant after 2 hours of catastrophe. It was full of frightening things. An uneasy and startling silence. When Yun Ten really started to count the remaining guards in the house, ordered the deployment of troops to search for suspects in every house in the city, and sent people to rush to inform the prefect of Shanning, the dull thunderous sound of horse hooves sounded outside the city gate. Formations of cavalry broke through the silent night. There is no need to go into details about what happened next. Officers and soldiers surrounded Yunzai. The Shangning army heard the news and dispatched, forming a two-army confrontation with the Xiling army. At the opened city gate, the atmosphere between the two armies was tense, and they were ready to fight if they disagreed. This general is ordered to investigate the case. Anyone who dares to obstruct will be regarded as treason. Xian Yuanyao raised his hand and raised the command talisman in his hand with a cold and majestic expression. Whoever dares to obstruct will be directly charged with resisting the imperial order and will implicate the 9 tribes. Outside the city gate are the iron-blooded cavalry, and in front of the army are the imposing young generals. Even though Xiangning's parents and officials have a close relationship with the Yun family, these city defenders are all men with parents and wives and children. Who would want to resist the decree? Who dares to resist the decree? Bang dang dang. All the weapons were thrown to the ground, and the soldiers inside the city gate knelt down. A city in Xiangning district dares to compete with the generals sent by the court? I don't even dare to ask God for courage. Xian Yuanyao sat on the horse, looking down at the commander of the Xiangning City Defense Army. Commander, he has made great contributions to this general in suppressing the rebellion today. When I return to the imperial capital, I will definitely mention it in front of His Majesty and the regent. Please reward Commander He and all the loyal soldiers. This sentence is a comfort and a promise. The soldiers led by He Yanfen lowered their heads. Although they did not speak, they were relieved in their hearts. Rewards or not are not important to them, as long as they can save their lives and prevent their families from being implicated. Military generals are different from civil officials. Most of the soldiers' impression of military generals is that they are open and keep their promises, and they are unwilling to believe the cunning and inconsistency of civil officials. This is the subconscious impression of people from the court who are not known to them. Xian Yuanyao put away the command token and raised his hand. Let's go. 2,000 well-trained soldiers quickly entered the city, 1,000 cavalry and 1,000 infantry, and the rest of the Xiling army stayed outside the city on standby. Xiejin did not sleep all night, and always ordered people to pay attention to the movements outside. When he heard that Xian Yuanyao had led his troops into the city smoothly and surrounded Yun's house, he sighed faintly. I wasted a bowl of medicinal materials in vain, and made me spit a few drops of blood in vain. The makeup on his face was also white. Xiejin got up to wash his face, washed off the pale makeup on his face bit by bit, changed into a white brocade robe, asked the maid to come and help him comb his hair, then stood up and slowly sorted out his robe. Even if he did not sleep all night, he still looked elegant and brilliant. Xiejin turned and walked out. Let's go, the dust has settled. Go and see the heroic spirit of the little leper general.